You mentioned the Crusades. The Crusades were a response to 7 centuries of Islamic aggression. They were a necessary response to Islamic violence and Islamic invasions of Christian land. Muslims invaded Egypt, they invaded Morocco, Algeria, Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, the southern coast of Dalmatia, Armenia, Turkey, Syria, Palestine, Israel, all before the First Crusade.
The Quran explicitly says slavery is only be taken in times of warfare. I cannot go ahead and take somebody as a slave.
So you can take someone as a slave?
In a state of warfare.
There you go. So you can take someone as a slave today.
I wanted to back up.
Let me give you another example. One second, let me give you another example. King Louis of France, 1289 to 1316. So whilst the Islamic world was rampantly and taking slaves across the entire world, King Louis of France, known as Louis the Quarrelsome, you do so good, France in 1315. This was accomplished through the Ordonnance de Louis X, which declared that all slaves in France were freed by royal decree.
When was that, sorry?
That was in 1289 to 1316.
That's 1,000 years after. It takes time.
And it's still better than Islam.
It takes time.
Has the Muslim world abolished slavery?
Well, there's no slaves in the Muslim.
Yes, there are.
I would disagree
Yes,
with
there
that.
are.
The Quran says.
Where can I buy a black slave today?
God knows.
In the Islamic world.
Well, in the same.
If I go to Malawi, if I go to Chad, I can buy a black child as a slave from a Muslim slave market.
Wait.
Who introduced slavery in the Middle East again?
In the same
in the
country,
21st century.
In the same country,
ISIS.
I would be. There's no need to talk about ISIS. I'll be killed there quicker than you will. Okay?
I know
you know that as well. So it takes time. Now, it does. The Quran. You can't say that the Quran advocates it. The Quran explicitly says slavery is only be taken in times of warfare. I cannot go ahead and take somebody as a slave.
So you can take someone as a slave?
In a state of warfare.
There you go. So you can take someone as a slave today.
Just like a prisoner of war.
So if there is a war,
there's a prisoner.
So if there is a war,
prisoners of war,
you are saying you can take slaves today.
And the prisoner, if they are taken prisoners,
they can be slaves. Yes.
And
there you go. And you're doing that because of Muhammad's teaching.
Let me finish.
Thank you.
Let me finish a bit. Okay, let me finish a bit.
Yeah.
In times of war under Islam, yes, you can. How should you treat them? Nothing like the prisoners of war in this country. But you have to treat them like yourself. Feed them like yourself. Clothe them like yourself.
But not.
Let me finish.
Go on.
Have them like yourself. But throughout the Quran, it is advocated so strongly everywhere is to free them. Free them. Free them. So that is a brilliant instruction. It is more humane than anything else. Show me how prisoners of war in Christian nations, the prisoners of war were treated just like their masters, were treated with the same food, the same clothing, as instructed by Muhammad himself and throughout his companions.
Brilliant. So what you all heard here today was that the Ahmadiyya Muslim is saying that you can own another human being as a slave.
I said what I said.
That's what he just said.
I didn't say that.
That is what you just said.
A prisoner of war is the same.
It's a slave.
What's the
one that your right hands possess.
What is
That's what the Quran says. One second. You asked me to give you saints from the Roman classical period who set slaves free. So here's a list. Saint Melania set free. Look it up. Saint Melania set free 8,000 slaves.
How many?
8,000 slaves. Saint Ovidius of Gaul set free 500 slaves. Saint Chromatius, a Roman prefect under the Emperor Diocletian, set free 1,400 slaves. Saint Hermas, under the prefect under Trajan, the Emperor Trajan, set free 1,200 slaves. Saint Augustine encouraged the clergy in his rule to set slaves free. Saint Constantine instituted the death penalty for those who took slaves. Saint Justinian abolished all the laws hindering the freeing of slaves. Saint Lactantius, in his divine institution, stated, "No slaves, there are no slaves in God's eyes." Saint Chrysostom stated, "In Jesus Christ there is no slave, and therefore it is not necessary to have one. Buy them, teach them, and release them." In homily 40 on 1 Corinthians 10, Saint Patrick in Ireland condemned the slave trade. Christians fought in the Islamic world to abolish the slave trade. The Barbary pirates only stopped taking slaves in the 17 and 1800s when the British, the French and the Americans bombed them into submission. That is what stopped slavery. And as you heard, he was saying Muhammad instituted slaves, and you could own slaves like the Barbary pirates in times of war.
I didn't say that. Let me say what I said.
Defend yourself.
All the examples you've given are centuries after Jesus' destruction. Paul, let me say my piece. Paul did not agree with any of that. He himself instructed masters to treat their slaves well. He did not tell them to free them at all. If you want to talk about slavery examples, why don't we look at the Crusades, where Christians came, and yes, they didn't take slavery, they just destroyed and annihilated all the men, women, and children in Jerusalem. And what did Salahuddin do? A Muslim. He freed the entire nation. So I could pickpocket examples as well, where Muslims have done great and freed thousands and millions of slaves as well. We can both play that card. But you've given me one text in your book, which fellow people have not agreed with that. Paul has not agreed with your interpretation. Yet with us, I'm saying a prisoner of war
Is a slave.
Is a slave, which is the same thing.
Is a slave.
Is the
There
same
you go.
thing. But we are not to treat them like a prisoner of war. We are to treat them as we treat ourselves. We are to feed them with the same food. They sit with us. They're clothed like us.
But you
They're
own them.
treated like us. We free them.
No,
Just like a prisoner.
no.
Wait.
You free them under certain circumstances as penalties for certain crimes.
No. We are instructed to free them all the time.
But
charity, all the time.
And this is why the Islamic world has never had an abolition movement.
I don't care about what the Islamic world, the abolition. Islamic world will kill me at a time.
I know.
Let's stick with the
I know.
Quranic text.
The Quranic text says that you can take slaves.
Okay.
Can you trade your slaves?
Wait.
Did Muhammad trade slaves?
Wait.
Did Muhammad trade
What is
slaves?
the difference between a prisoner of war and a slave?
Did Muhammad trade slaves?
Yes.
Yes. There you go. Muhammad traded slaves.
Let me ask you. This country goes into war. They take prisoners of war. What's the difference between that and a slave? You tell me.
Right. Here's the difference.
Go on.
We have a tradition of taking prisoners of war. But
How did you treat them?
no, 1 second. But when the war ended, the prisoners are released and allowed to go back home.
No.
No, 1 second.
I don't agree with that.
No, 1
I
second.
don't
Now
agree
you
with that.
mentioned the Crusades.
Go on.
You mentioned the Crusades. The Crusades were a response to 7 centuries of Islamic aggression. They were a necessary response to Islamic violence and Islamic invasions of Christian land.
Give me an example.
Now, what do you mean an example? Muslims invaded Egypt, they invaded Morocco, Algeria, Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, the southern coast of Dalmatia, Armenia, Turkey,
Sorry.
Syria,
At that
Palestine,
time-
Israel, all before the first crusade. No, also you lied. Also you lied. Because you said the Christians just went in there and destroyed everything. Yes, there are some examples of that, but the reality is the Crusader states would never have succeeded for 200 years if they had just decimated the local population. The reality is that the vast majority of the citizens of the Crusader states were the people that were living there before the Latins arrived. And even Muslims themselves said that the Muslims inside the Crusader states were treated better by their Crusader overlords than the Muslims in the Muslim world.
I don't agree with that.
That is literally what Muslim travelers have said.
Can you show me, wait, are you denying the fact that when the Crusades invaded Jerusalem, took control of it, that there was not a massacre of men, women and children? Are you denying that?
The massacre is, historians believe that the massacre is exaggerated. Dr. Schrader, there you go, I gave you an historian immediately. Which historians? Dr. Schrader. Also.
A Christian? I don't know, you tell me.
Yes, she's a Christian.
So against all the other historians.
Yes, historians
disagree.
Shall I tell you why they believe that the massacre is exaggerated? Because the stories about the massacres talk about blood going up above the ankles of the Crusaders.
Of course, that's an example. That's an exaggeration.
Of course, there you go. It's an exaggeration.
Of course, you're not going to have rivers
Thank
of blood.
you.
But
exactly, it was an exaggeration.
But the massacre.
Am I denying massacres? No.
Right. So there you
but
go.
what I'm
That's
saying
what,
is,
I didn't lie, did I?
Your characterization.
You said
yes,
I lied.
it was a lie. Your characterization of the Crusades is entirely false.
They were massacres of men, women, and children.
And you're saying Muslims never did that?
No, I'm saying I'll give you.
What about what Muhammad did at the Kaaba?
You can pick examples.
What did Muhammad do at the Kaaba? What did he do to the Jews at the Kaaba?
Which Kaaba? What does that mean?
So when he defeated the Jews of the Kaaba, the Banu Quraysh, what did he do to the Jews? He allowed 900 of them to be massacred. So here you are.
Banu Qurayza.
What? The Qurayza.
Sorry.
They were massacred, were they not?
Men were massacred.
They were massacred. So he's condemning the Crusades, which means that he should condemn Muhammad. Was Muhammad wrong?
Let me answer.
Was Muhammad wrong? There you go. The double standards.
Let me example. Let me. I am comparing an example where the Crusades, the Christians, just like how God and Jesus instructed Joshua to kill men, women, children, rip out babies from womb. That is explicitly forbidden in Islam. Yes, warring men were killed at the time of Muhammad.
The victory,
But the women, the children, they were not massacred.
Yeah, they were taken as slaves.
Like the Where?
Yes.
Show me
yes.
Give me an example.
So look, right. So firstly, let's just correct something.
Go on.
Notice that from his logic, Muhammad is no better than a Crusader.
I didn't say that at all.
The Crusaders
I said
massacred
they're way better.
and Muhammad massacred.
Muhammad killed fighting men.
allowed 900 captives
Fighting men.
to be massicared after the Muslims had won.
Fighting men.
The war was over.
Say fighting men.
The war was over.
But say.
Was the war over?
There
you go. Yes, they had been defeated. So these were 900 unarmed men, 900 men who were not fighting, and Muhammad allowed them to be massacred.
Okay, let me answer that.
No, ladies and gentlemen, no, I'm not finished.
Okay, I will.
I know I'm not finished. No, ladies and gentlemen, what happened to the women and children? I'll tell you what happened. Muhammad allowed them to be taken as slaves. One of those women was taken by one of the companions of the Prophet as a sex slave. And Muhammad heard about this and heard about her beauty and commanded that this sex slave should be given to him.
Can you name her?
I will name her in a short second, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, within a few days of just seeing her father and her brother and her husband killed, she was having to have sex with Muhammad himself. How many of you women here, when the people that have just killed your father, your brother, your cousins, would want to have sex with the man that just had them killed? None of you would. Why? because it ain't normal to do that. But Muhammad had sex with a woman who was in mourning for her entire family, and the Muslims themselves were so scared of what this woman might do to Muhammad that one of them stood as guard outside of the tent with a sword to come and protect Muhammad in case the woman tried to kill him. Does that sound like consent, or does that sound like rape?
Let me respond. Okay, so you talk about Banu Qurayza. Give me a second. What happened? There were 3 tribes. What Bob doesn't do is give you the context of the whole thing. Gives you one little snippet, forgets the whole historical context. There were 3 Jewish tribes in Medina. All 3 of them betrayed Muhammad. The first one betrayed him. What did Muhammad do? He told them, he exiled them. Get out. He let them alone. The second one, the Banu Nadir, what did he do? He let them free. All of them. What did they do? They went to the Meccans, his enemy, incited hatred, caused a war. They came back and fought against Muhammad. Third time, what happened? Yes, Muhammad said, that's enough. I can't deal with you people. I let you go, you come and fight me again. No, I will now, all your fighting men will be killed, because they constantly broke their treaties many times. They attempted his assassination twice. Obviously, he's not going to let them free. He killed the men, he took the woman as prisoner. That is far better than what Jesus and God and Yahweh instructs Joshua. When Joshua took over the cities, he put to the sword men, women, children, animals. Babies were slaughtered under the command of Yahweh Jesus, who follows. So take this in context. I explained really well. All the other stuff about slavery, I think God, I'm not sure where he's getting all these sources from.
Can I say something?
No. We're having a conversation. I'll debate you in a second. I want to finish my debate with him.
No.
1 second. Me and you. No, I'm not giving him. I'll debate you second.
I will answer more.
No, I will debate you later. I'll debate you later. I want to finish my conversation with him. Right? So let's just be clear, ladies and gentlemen. Because the thing is, there is a lot of ignorance about Christianity. Most people in English culture don't know the first thing about Christianity. So they hear about a story from the Old Testament and they don't understand how Christians use that story. Christians believe in a covenantal system. Christians believe that God established a new covenant in Christ. And in that new covenant, he will not be able to show me any actions of Jesus that match the actions that I am condemning about Muhammad's behavior. And I have the story of Safiya here. Ladies and gentlemen, the faith that I am calling you to is the faith of the new covenant, not the old covenant. And in that faith, ladies and gentlemen, there is no action where Christ a woman that he's had as a slave.
No way.
But Muhammad a woman that he has just taken as a slave. Muslims uphold Muhammad as the example to follow. Christians say follow the example of Jesus. And just as earlier in this debate, he admitted that it is better to set slaves free than to take them as slaves, and therefore Christ and his followers who set slaves free are all better than Muhammad. Well, I would suggest to you that it is better not to take slaves and rape them than it is to take slaves and rape them, and that is what Muhammad did to Safiya. Remember, her entire family had died. He's throwing out this Old Testament passage because he can't put a scratch on Jesus Christ. But I'm not appealing to the prophets before Muhammad. I'm talking about Muhammad himself and saying Muhammad is a worse example than King Ethelbert, a worse example than King Louis, a worse example than Saint Ovidius, all of whom were inspired by Jesus Christ. Go on.
Okay, so fair enough. Jesus did in the past advocate the murder of men, women, and children. In the past, he changes it. In Joshua, he says it very clearly to Joshua. He instructs it very, very much. But then what happens in the end times over here as well? Your same Jesus will come, bring the sword, and he'll annihilate everybody in the book of Revelation. Would he not? So there is no concept of a peaceful. There is in his time where he had no power. But it's different. When you have power, then things will change. Regarding Safiya and this prisoner of war, we've gone through that many times. In fact, when you read the whole story about Safiya, the narrations which he himself also takes on board, talks about her having dreams of marrying an Arab chieftain, of a moon coming to her lap and marrying. She praised him. She stuck with him all the way through. Now there are examples of women.
He didn't rape her, get that out.
Exactly. He did not. I'm going to make it very explicit. He did not rape her. There was another example where he married a woman, and when he went to her, the woman said, "I seek refuge with God from you." Immediately he backed off, and he said, "You have accepted. You've taken refuge from the greatest of the Lord. I accept," and he divorced her straight away. So there are many examples of this. It was a time, at that time, she accepted it. What happened? She was a prisoner of war. She stuck with him. She praised him throughout their relationship, even before the relationship as well. So this is just some of the what I would say.
Can I
take
reply
it
to that?
all in context.
So he tried to give you the context.
Yes.
He tried to say that she was a slave, a prisoner of war, who ended up sticking with Muhammad and ended up praising him. What choice did she have? Her father had been killed, her brothers had been killed, her uncles had been killed. She was alone in the world. There is a well-known psychological condition, Stockholm Syndrome, which is when you have been with your captor for a very long time, you start to identify with your captor. Let me just read the source from the History of Al-Tabari, as published by the State University of New York Press, Volume 39, as translated by Ella Laudasseron. Ibn Umar, Kathir bin Zaid, Al-Walid bin Rabah, Abu Hurairah. While the Prophet was lying with Safiya, Abu Ayyub stayed the night at his door. When he saw the Prophet in the morning, he said, "God is the greatest." He had a sword with him, and he said to the Prophet, "O Messenger of God, this young woman has just been married, and you killed her father, her brother, and her husband. So I did not trust her." And you, Prophet, laughed and said, "Good." So in other words, imagine the scene. This poor woman has just seen that Muhammad had her father, her brother, and her husband killed. And now, powerless, defenseless, and with no allies, the man that has just killed her entire family wants to have sex with her. No woman watching this is going to take seriously the suggestion that she opened up her legs and went, "Yes, Muhammad, yes!" That is completely ridiculous. This was a woman that was afraid, that was powerless, and that was a captive. And I can completely believe, after years and years and years of being raped by this man, night after night, that she did identify with him, and she did think of herself as one of his wives. But that is not how the story started. And ladies and gentlemen, the Muslims themselves were scared of what she might do to him because of what he did to her family. And what does that tell you about the context of the night of marriage?
Right, can we say
No, he's talking.
Okay, I'll say one more thing.
My camera's pointing down.
No, hold on one second.
Bob,
You're
Bob.
not jumping into this conversation.
You-
Me and him
you-
Right,
You're
no.
fabricating a lot of
Right,
information.
so he's. Are you running?
No, I'll say it.
Right,
not
you
running,
finish
we
what you wanted to
Bob,
say.
we don't
Finish
run.
what you
I don't.
wanted to say.
Bob, we don't run. from
Finish
people
what you
like
wanted to say.
Okay, I reject that narration from Tabari. If you know Tabari, he narrates all his sources in the beginning of volume 1, in the introduction. He has the isnad of all of his sources for later scholars to critique. I completely reject that. Now, Prophet Muhammad never, ever forced himself on anybody. As the example I gave, where he went to a newlywed wife, she sought refuge, he backed off. And there are so many examples. He would never, ever do that. So the whole thing about him forcing himself is completely, we reject it, completely fabricated. Now I do bring it back to where your God instructs your people to not only massacre men, women, and children.
Sorry,
And
my people. My people. Who are my people?
I say your God instructs. No, I didn't say your people.
Yes, you did.
You're the enemy. Okay? So your God instructed Moses to take the young women as sex slaves as well. There, pure instructions there. And then later on to Joshua,
Show me. Show me where it says take them as sex slaves.
takes them as slaves, the young
Yeah.
women.
kill all the young men.
Yeah.
Kill all the men.
You're desperate to get into this. I've said I'll debate you
because I'm
later.
going to correct you.
Yeah,
just
that's
said so
great,
many
great
bad
sound
things.
bites. But we're going to talk about something else.
No, I'm going to talk
We're
about this
going
thing.
to talk about something else.
No. I'm going to.
We're going to talk about Muhammad's other sins.
No.
We're going to talk about Muhammad's other sins, me and you.
We're going to talk about the lies of Bob. That's what we're going
Right,
to talk
ladies and gentlemen, while he's finding the passage.
Numbers 31.
Right, go on. Where does it say sex slaves?
Hold on a second. So
Where does it say have sex with them?
Where does it say?
That's what we're looking
Where
for.
does it say that Muhammad had sex?
yeah, tell us that.
Hypocrisy.
I'll show you.
reject that.
I'll show you.
Show us where the word
I'm
sex
going
is
to
there.
show you.
Moses told his men.
Yeah.
He told them to kill all the women.
Yes.
Who were not virgins, but to keep the women who were still virgins. Numbers 31.
He's not quoting the Bible.
I'll quote the Bible exactly. if you
That's
want
the
me.
thing Moses did out of anger.
No,
to. Oh, okay,
he's not
fair
quoting the Bible. He's quoting Wikipedia.
enough. Numbers 31.
Do you want to, Bob, this?
This is Old Testament.
It's Old Covenant. It's Old Covenant.
Well, okay, just you say
Numbers 31.
he's saying he's justifying it.
Right,
Fair
one
enough.
second. Numbers 31. Let's go to this. Just want to keep an eye on my Christian brother over there.
Bob,
So-
this mic.
Moses was very angry with officers of the army. This 14. Okay?
Yeah.
Moses said to them, have you let the woman live? Behold, these cause problems. Therefore kill. And they,
Wait, let's go to the passage. Let's go to the
Number
passage.
17.
Where are we going? Numbers 31 or number 17?
Numbers 31, verse 17.
Right, let's go there. One second.
Numbers 31.
No, numbers.
Numbers
Now
31.
notice, ladies and gentlemen, how
Numbers.
they cannot defend Muhammad's behavior.
Alhamdulillah, we defending him.
They cannot defend Muhammad's behavior.
We're to defend
They
him.
are giving no justification
31.
to what Muhammad did.
Yep.
They are simply
31.
trying to change
17.
the topic to the Bible.
No. We are comparing
And
it.
I want him to show me where any Christian has used Numbers 31 to practice sexual slavery.
Yes.
Show me. Which Christian
history.
did that?
Go through
Which
history.
Christian did that?
Go through history.
Yes, go on, show me one. You say yes, and you say go through history, so give me an example of a Christian king that established sex slavery, quoting Numbers 31.
Name one.
Name one.
If you go to America, when I'm going to answer you. When you go to America, when they enslaved black people, they quoted the Bible to oppress them, to have sex with them. Fact. Ask any African American what was done to them, and they used the Bible to do it.
Right, so now let me correct him again.
Well,
Pick out, no, 1 second, you allowed him to jump in. Let me correct him again,
17.
because now I'm going to expose the lies of the Muslims against the Christians.
Yes.
The Bibles that the Christians in the southern states of America gave to their slaves were called slave Bibles. Go and Google that word, slave Bibles, America.
They were still
The
Christians.
Bibles,
The Christians
the
lied.
Bibles,
Christians
the
lied.
Bibles that were given to the slaves were deliberately edited
Prove that.
to take verses.
No, no,
I
no,
will.
no.
To take verses out of the Bible
Yeah, but let me
that
answer
can
that.
inspire the slaves to seek their freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, notice he's not even listening. So now
Somebody's
I will
behind
prove
him.
it.
Number 30.
Now I will prove it.
No,
You allowed him to jump in.
Can we
He
finish
asked me to prove it, so now I'm going to prove it.
The book of Exodus.
Now
was
I'm going
adapted
to
from
prove
the
it.
Slave Bible.
Right?
There's no
Right,
Exodus.
let me answer to this.
No, I'm going to prove it.
No, let me answer this now.
So he didn't tell you that, did he?
No.
He didn't tell you
Right.
about how these Bibles were edited
right.
because the slave owners
that's not the
were
argument.
fearful
Right.
that the Bible might inspire the slaves to pursue their freedom.
Right. So
He
now-
didn't tell you
So
that.
now, what Bob has proven is how Christians lie. How Christians...
All Christians,
They were Christians.
everywhere.
They were Christians who lied and who edited their Bible to enslave and have sex with black people. That is Christianity, I'm afraid. That is Christianity. And he has just proven it. He has just proven white Christians in America deliberately wrote slave Bibles to enslave black African people in the name of Jesus. That's what they did, in the name of Jesus. That's what he's trying to show to you. Bob's ancestors, who may have been slave owners, deliberately done this. There you go. What more evidence do you want?
Now let me prove it to you.
I know what they did.
Ladies and gentlemen,
It is irrelevant.
think about the
Christians
logic.
lie. Christians
Think
lie.
about the logic. Now he's triggered. He's forced his way into a discussion despite my objections.
I didn't
And now
force
he's
my way.
triggered because he doesn't want to let me speak.
Oh.
Think about the logic. The slave owners had to redact, edit, and remove passages from the Bibles that they gave to their slaves.
They did it in their
Why
history.
did they
Edited,
do that,
edited.
ladies and gentlemen?
In their history.
Notice his
Edited
rudeness.
even today.
Notice how triggered he is that he can't let me speak.
Can you
What does that tell you about the Bible? It
That is
tells
being
you about the
edited.
Bible,
Edited.
that the Bible inspires the liberation and the setting free of slaves. That's what it tells you about the Bible. And ladies and gentlemen, he created the Truman-Keown fallacy. What's the Truman-Keown fallacy? The Truman-Keown fallacy is when you say that the believer defines the religion and not the book. If I said Muslims are killing apostates because of the books of Islam, he would say that they're not following the book. He would say that they are ignoring the book. But yet, he has just reversed the logic when he is applying it to Christianity. He's saying that the Christians, not the Bible, defines the reality. Let me talk about the slave Bibles. What is notable about the slave Bible is not just its rarity, but its content, or rather, the lack of content. It excludes any portion of text that might inspire
one of the biggest
rebellion
scholars in the
or
world.
liberation.
know about
Anthony
him.
Smith, an associate curator of the Bible and religion in America at the museum, says it's the first instance of
the
this
top
abridged
scholars in the
version. Now, I will interrupt this man whenever I please. But notice how he will complain about my interruptions, despite the fact you've all witnessed him interrupting me incessantly. He will now complain. Compare this to the surah of the Quran that says forbidden to you to have sex with are categories of women, but one of those that you can have sex with are the women that your right hands possess. The Quran legitimizes sex slavery, and
Not
that
in
is
the
what is
Quran.
in the Quran. And now I will
in the
show
Quran.
you in the Quran, because every time he calls me a liar, I am proving him
I
wrong.
never called him a liar.
Deuteronomy 22 verse 25,
I-
I refute it. Deuteronomy 22.
Pull it up for me, bro. Pull it up for me.
I never called him a liar. That's a lie.
Go to that verse about the
No, you allowed him in. I'm now talking to him.